Good evening from Auckland, New Zealand, gentlemen. Welcome to the APSI Strategic Forum discussion. And a special welcome to retired Brigadier Kuldip Hsing, who is now in Auckland. Welcome, and I hope you will enjoy your time in New Zealand. Please note that the views of these discussions do not necessarily represent the view of APSI Forum and Center of Excellence and their institutions, and also the views of their countries. Let me briefly state the background of this session. Amid a backdrop of escalating global tensions and complex geopolitical challenges, several critical issues demand urgent attention, such as crisis in Ukraine, long-standing tension in the Middle East, China's increasingly assertive stance toward Taiwan, persistent threats from North Korea and Iran, and of course, ongoing challenges posed by non-state actors. In this forum discussion, we will be discussing geopolitical cooperation over open waters. As we know, there are pivotal maritime regions that play crucial roles in global geopolitics. Those strategic waterways serve as critical channels for international shipping and represent significant theaters of geopolitical influence and military presence. The Red Seas that links Europe, Asia, and Africa facilitates a substantial portion of global trade through the Suez Canal. The Taiwan Straits, situated between the East China and the South China Sea, is a flashpoint in East Asia, underscoring tensions and competitions between major powers. Meanwhile, the Indian Ocean, connecting the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia, is a vital artery for energy supplies. So understanding the dynamics of cooperation and conflict in these regions is essential for comprehending the broader contours of geopolitical strategies and security arrangement. It is an honor to have 5 distinguished guests who are the experts in their field. First, we have Professor Mumin Chen from Taiwan. Professor Chen has been teaching international relations in Taiwan since 2004 and worked as visiting scholars in universities or think tanks in China, Singapore, India, Germany, and Sri Lanka. His research includes non-traditional security issues, foreign relations of China and East Asia, and politics, as well as security issues in South Asia. He has published 6 books and co-edited 3 books with topics relating to India, South Asia, and international relations. He has also promoted academic and think tank cooperation between Taiwan and India. From September 2020 to April 2024, Professor Chen served as Deputy Representative of Taipei Economic and Cultural Center in Delhi, the official Taiwanese mission in India. Then we have Professor Amit Gupta. He is a senior advisor to the Forum of Federations, Canada. He has previously taught at Illinois Wesleyan University, Stonehill College. He is the co-author, and editor of the following books: Building an Arsenal, The Evolution of Regional Power Force Structures, then India's Nuclear Security, then the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific, Maritime Challenges, Opportunities, and Policies, Global Security Watch, and Strategic Stability in Asia, and Air Forces Next Generations. His writings have also appeared in journals such as Orbis, Asian Survey, The Roundtable, and Security Dialogue. Retired Brigadier Kuldip Hsing is another panelist. He currently works at Palladium Consulting India, Mumbai. Previously, he worked as a consultant for the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center in Thailand, the National Disaster Management Authority, Government of India, National Security Council at the Prime Minister's Office, Defense Intelligence Agency, Ministry of Defense, and the Indian Army. Then we have Dov Lipman. Rabbi Dov Lipman was elected to the 19th MK in January 2013, making him the first American-born MK in 30 years. He holds rabbinic ordination from Near Israel Rabbinical College and a master's in education from Johns Hopkins University. Rabbi Lipman is the author of 9 books about Judaism and Israel, and is invited to speak about Israel to audiences worldwide. He is the founder of CEO of Yad L'Olim, an NGO that assists and advocates for Olim, and serves as political commentator for I-24 News and ILTV. Last but not the least, of course, is Professor Sabaileh. He is a Jordanian university professor and geopolitical expert. He is also a leading columnist in national, regional, and international media, offers consultancies to think tanks, and speaks at international conferences on Middle East politics and development. Professor Sabaileh is also a recognized expert on terrorism, de-radicalization, and security studies.
Okay, yeah. I think that I want to make it clear that the U.S. did not say they did not want to sell weapons to Taiwan. They did not sell assault weapons to Taiwan. Assault weapons are like a submarines or some very advanced fighter jets. But on other military equipment, the U.S. did sell to Taiwan. Our response is that on certain weapon systems we try to develop by ourselves, like submarines. Right now we have Taiwanese made submarines. It will take a few more years to become operational, but we are making it. And second is that we think that the conflict in the Taiwan Strait is not that which either side could launch like all-out war. So for Taiwan, I think to maintain a credible deterrence is possible. And so for Taiwan, I think to have a missile defense system is probably more important than buying more assault weapons. So I think land-based, sea-based missile systems, this is something we have been doing. So I think that Taiwanese defense strategy is a bit different from big countries like the U.S. or China, and the purpose is to maintain a credible deterrence. That's my answer.
Thank you very much. Possibly Brigadier Hsing or Professor Gupta will have comment or questions for Professor Chen.
But Professor Chen, I have a question. My view on war is that after the first round is fired, no one really knows what course that war will take. And history tells us that major wars have often started, without intending to. So you really think that the Chinese may try to take one of the major islands, secondary islands of Taiwan in an attempt?
Directly. Of course, China will not be satisfied by just occupying 1 or 2 small islands. But you have to know that what China is doing today on Taiwan or in the Taiwan Strait is to create a huge psychological effect on the Taiwanese people. You imagine that if in the first round of the war in the Taiwan Strait, if Taiwan lose, and then our government might collapse, And people might demand the government said that we should negotiate and we should surrender, things like that. So I think that China, they are very clever. They are not going to pay a huge price to win a war in the Taiwan Strait. They want to achieve their goal by controlling Taiwan or force the US out with a very low price. So a psychological effect is very, very important. So that is why Philippines, the new Philippine president, we know that he also changed their country's policies on China, and now he has more cooperation with the U.S. And so right now you see in the South China Sea in the recent months, there are more confrontation between Chinese and the Philippine, Navy and all Coast Guards, and it is all because the Philippine president changed the policy and also the closer partnership between the Philippines and the U.S.
Thank you very much. The Indian Ocean is another interesting case. The Indian Ocean can be China's strategic vulnerabilities. Its naval forces have to be deployed through narrow choke points. And as we know, the Indian subcontinent dominates the northern Indian Ocean. But China has successfully mitigated its vulnerability through China's strength of pearl strategy and the maritime Silk Road. And this, of course, have invoked significant security concerns for India. For this reason, the Indian Ocean remains a critical area of strategic competition between India and China. So China or India will likely be willing to take some strategic risk. Now, this question would be for Brigadier Hsing and Professor Gupta. So what is your analysis? Possibly we can start with Professor Gupta.
Okay, I have a different view on this, and I'll be very clear. I don't think it's a naval confrontation. The Indians lack the money, and the Chinese are more concerned about what's going on in the Western Pacific and increasingly the Southwestern Pacific. The Indians would like a conventional deterrent in the form of large aircraft carriers, too expensive. They would like a nuclear deterrent in the form of submarines. That would be the more intelligent pathway. But I really think the conflict between India and China is a land-based one along a very long, difficult border. And that's where really the money is going to be spent. Having said that, I think the way to contain China is really to boost the economic partnerships across the region, where it comes to the position where the Chinese finally begin to realize South China Sea, East China Sea, is it worth it given the hundreds of billions of dollars you're making in trade? And this is where RCEP should grow. I mean, to me, the people who are going to be the most interesting in this are the small countries. It's ASEAN, it's the New Zealanders, it's the Australians. It's not so much the Indias and the Chinas. Because as they grow the economic partnership, I think you end up with harder, more difficult choices for the large countries. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. How about Brigadier Hsing?
No, my answer will be, I'll try to take up all of 5 minutes that have been allocated. I will start by saying, or quoting, Alfred Trade Mahan, who was one of the finest naval strategists in the world till now. And he had famously said that if you have an ocean to yourself or large seas to yourself or to your borders, then there's potential to be a massive or a very large economic power. And gradually, as you go down that path of being an economic power, you will have to develop a military to protect those economic interests and the financial interests which grew alongside the economic interests abroad. Now, in the case of China, that has been the problem. You see, an economic problem or an economic issue has turned into a military problem. How that has happened? After Deng Xiaoping's reform and economic opening and his policy of hide and bite, that is, hide your capabilities, bide your time, etc., and all that, they adopted the so-called model of post Second World War Germany and Japan, and not that of the pre-war Germany and Japan. That means they wanted to avoid conflict, and which they have tried to do so till about a couple of years back. Absolutely avoid conflict. So they focused on developing their economy. Now, their economy is totally dependent on two things. One is excess of energy and resources from outside, production inside, and trading those commodities outside. There was a time when 60% of the white goods of the world were being produced by China. Now, since trade travels by sea, massive trade travels by sea, the configuration of China within the East China Sea and the South China Sea is such, with the island chains, the first island chain and second island chain, that it can easily be blockaded, starting off from the Kuril Islands up to Malacca. It can easily be blockaded by a major power, for example, like the United States, by merely positioning their military assets and the choke points of the first or second island chain, including Malacca. So even in the Indian Ocean, India juts into and overlooks, the Indian Ocean, and it's at the central midpoint. And with due respect, I would like to, honorably, disagree with Professor Dr. Amit. India has been operating aircraft carriers since 1964. At this present moment, the kind of aircraft carriers that China is operating are of the similar variety, that is 40 to 50,000 ton class of the, which were the Lion class and all that, and the Vikramaditya class or the, Vikrant class that we have. It is only now that China is trying to operationalize a flat deck carrier. All these are jump jet carriers till now. And we have also, got 2 to 3 aircraft carriers operational at the moment. There is a nuclear SSBN which is operational. Yes, we need a few more, and work on that is under progress. I can't speak much more on that, but yes, there is a SSBN and associated missiles which are available. So it is not that the Indian Navy is just a pushover. No, it's a very powerful Navy in its own domain, considering that the Chinese are on the eastern side of the Malacca Strait. Also, now I would like to take you back to the Monroe Doctrine and the story of the Greater Caribbean. Now, what had happened over there? The American Navy, prior to the implementation of the Monroe Doctrine and the Spanish Wars, the American Navy had been constrained to operate only in its own neighborhoods. It's only after they pushed out all the powers, the European powers from that area, that they were able to foray and became the predominant navy in the Western Hemisphere. And after Second World, after all the other navies, the British Navy, the French Navy, the German Navy had all destroyed themselves in the Second World War. They became the preeminent, expeditionary military power across the globe. Now, China is trying to do exactly that. They are embroiled badly within the construct of the Malacca, the first island chain, and they're stuck over there, and they can't break out till the time they are able to subdue all these places, which is not going to be an easy task. So for Chinese to project power into the Indian Ocean is still very far away. Since 2009, they have been operating that APTF, that Anti-Piracy Task Force, which has been fluctuating from 3 vehicles to 6 vehicles every now and then. They have got a military base now at Djibouti. But Djibouti also has Camp Lemonnier, in which they are the Americans, the British, the French, the Italians, and a host of other people who are there. So really speaking, that is not a military base. It's just a base for practice or for R&R. For this thing, because in case of a war, you can't have a military base sitting next to the people that you're fighting over there. So that is the thing that I'm talking about. So insofar as the string of pearls is concerned, Chinese have a focus on the economic power, or building up the economic power. Now, why is that? there is a reason for that, that in China, there is just one party. There is no one to blame. Like, for example, if you have recently watched the Trump-Biden debate, they both had ended up blaming each other for all the ills. Now, in China, there's nobody else to blame. The CPC can't say we blame ourselves. So their legitimacy within, as the Chinese Communist Party, comes from the fact that of the deliverance of economic prosperity to its own people. That is from where they derive their legitimacy. In the Chinese leadership, they also understand that the days of Tiananmen Square kind of crackdowns is no longer there. The world is not going to stand by and let that pass so easily. If we are aware of what happened when Tiananmen Square was there and the sanctions all over, this time perhaps if they do such crackdowns, it'll be much worse. So their focus is on delivering economic prosperity to their people. And that is where you have to look at the BRI, the CPEC, etc., where it comes to. Yes, there is an element of thinking or thought in the Chinese that sometime in the future, most of these ports, depending on its importance, they may like to develop that as a military basing. That's sometime in the future. Now, insofar as in the immediate neighborhood of India is concerned, let's be very clear. What is a military base? Firstly, a military base requires protection, meaning that if China is to develop a military base, let's say, assume in Sri Lanka, then Sri Lanka is tucked in the bottom tip of India, virtually tucked in the bottom tip of India. Okay, it is about 10 minutes or 7 minutes flying time from the nearest fighter base. And it is about half a day sailing time for the expeditionary forces that India has. So it will have to protect itself with superior forces on that base, meaning air defense, land defense, etc., etc., etc. So do you think, given the fact that India enjoys the advantage of what we call home proximity or theater advantage, home theater advantage, we are at home. Okay, we are going to fight out of our home. So people who are going to come from outside will be always case of resources. So therefore, Chinese are not going to ever end up trying to set up a base in Sri Lanka or Maldives or in the immediate vicinity of India. What they're going to try and do is intelligence gathering and try and build up influence. So that is what my take on the whole issue is.
Thank you. But how about growing Indian military build-up and relations with Japan and growing relation with the United States? These certainly are some of Beijing's concern, and probably it will push Beijing to take India more seriously, let's say in military strategy and planning, or technological development and advancement, strategic alliances, and many others. Possibly we can discuss this briefly?
Yes, ma'am. To get back to the same issue, I don't think so Chinese have the ability to project major power into the Indian Ocean at this moment. Today, they possess the largest number of naval warships in the world. But that kind of expeditionary capability that is required to operate far away from their bases on mainland China or coastal China is not there at the moment. So they can operate very easily in their own periphery up to the first island chain, up to their second island chain. But across the Malacca, no. Across this is at this moment, no. And into the Indian Ocean at this moment, no. They need to really build up a far bigger capability or a far superior capability with the existing warships, to be able to do that. Okay. Now, insofar as alliances with the US and Japan are concerned, I don't think so. One should only see those alliances in terms of being anti-China. Today, if you look at the trade between South Korea and China and between Japan and China, given the history of centuries of animosity, okay, and the kind of things that one visit to a temple starts off a kind of, chain of bad words between each nation, yet they are trading with each other. So, and they talk to each other. So insofar as us talking to, being allies with US is concerned, India has been very careful, and has been very sagacious enough to ensure that, it's the actions of others or the interests of others, other nations, superior powers, do not allow it to get entrapped into unnecessary wars. Wars are exceptionally debilitating. Like I was trying to mention to Professor Chen, after the first round is fired, nobody knows which way that thing is. Easy to start a war. It's very difficult to know how to end that war. So therefore, and at this moment, things are not of the level that calls for a kind of a war-like situation. It is the same border from 1962 till recently in 2020, apart from barring one incident of Sumdurung Chu, has been absolutely peaceful. Not a shot was fired on this. So India is well capable of managing its own. It's got a massive and a very capable and efficient army. I have been in the armed forces for a very long number of years. After I served in the Defense Intelligence Agency, I served in the National Security Council.
Control the Indian Ocean, but I think China try very hard to secure this energy lifeline will not be affected. So, so how do you see these two professors? So from energy perspective, because they don't just build naval bases, they also build up this gas and pipelines, from Pakistan or from Myanmar, and going all the way to Yunnan and also to Xinjiang. That's my
I would like to answer that as follows. Like I mentioned, it's an economic problem which has turned into a military problem insofar as China is concerned. Yes, absolutely, very well said that it is energy lines in the Indian Ocean, trade lines, the energy excess, the resource excess, minerals coming in, and, trade materials, finished materials going down to North Africa, Europe, etc. and all that. So it is because of this danger to their trade, which was postured by superior military powers like the USA, etc., that we can choke you. And like I said, the legitimacy of the CPC comes from its ability to deliver prosperity. And if you read Chinese internal writings, they look at this dismemberment of this ability as one of the main security threats to themselves. So they are very afraid of what they call Luan. Luan has been the history of Chinese chaos with instability. So they are very scared of that. So therefore, this is one of the reasons they took 3 steps to secure their economy or protect their economy. They took 3 steps. The first step was they decided to build a powerful navy. Way back in the 1996, I've forgotten the name of that admiral who wrote down that paper, and he said that this is how the Navy developed the naval development plan by about 2040. So that was one. The second one was, but developing a navy takes time. You can make an aircraft carrier, but training of the people, etc., takes time. So therefore, they have embarked on building a navy. In the meantime, they decided to diversify, the energy excess, their trade resource excess, and their, trade movement inland. Now, this is where all the pipelines from Siberia, from Russia, coming down into, China, and the, oil pipelines, the gas pipelines which are coming in from Turkmenistan and Central Asia, and the rail line that's going down towards Rotterdam, etc., come in. And of course, then they have been embarking on the string of pearls, like the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, trying to bypass the entire movement, come down straight down to Gwadar, and from there go out, which has not really worked till now. Yes, you're right. Energy security, etc., is a very major thing. And they are trying their best to try and put forces over there to operate over there. But my point was that it will be some time before the Chinese can really project power into the Indian Ocean.
Thank you. We don't have much time. Another open water that has been the source of international tension is the Red Sea. The northern end of the Red Sea is bordered by the state of Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. The Houthis' attack on the Red Sea have affected Israel, of course, and Jordan, and of course the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. For Jordan, the Houthis' attack has affected Jordan's import and export through the port of Aqaba. The attempt of Iran and its proxies to use the Kingdom of Jordan's airspace to launch attacks against Israel was successfully stopped by the Kingdom of Jordan. And as a result, there is a clash between Jordan, potential clash between Jordan and Iran. Iran, Lebanese Hezbollah, and Hezbollah's Iraqi sister militia Kataib have also pressured the Kingdom of Jordan. So if Jordan is not able to resist Iran's pressure and the pressure of its proxy, possibly it will put Israel in such a precarious situation. So let's discuss this briefly. Possibly we start with Rabbi Lipman and then Professor Amer Sabaileh.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the question. As a starting point, Israel is very aware of the fact that at any point in time, Israel could be alone and not have the support of countries in the region or in the world. And Israel is prepared for that situation and will do whatever it has to do to protect itself. And we've shown that that is the way that we will be. But having said that, we certainly prefer to work together with a coalition of countries in dealing with the threats against Israel. As you mentioned, that one terrible night, and everyone who's watching should just understand what it means for an entire country to have over 300 ballistic missiles sent and everyone in the shelters, and the incredible cooperation that took place between Israel and neighboring countries and the United States and some European countries in dealing with that attack. That shows the capabilities that we have when we work together. It's critical to understand that the Shiite-Sunni battle and debate, which goes back many, many centuries, is very much alive and well. And as much as here and there, you will hear countries such as Jordan or Saudi Arabia speak out against Israel, behind the scenes, there's actually a very strong coalition that has been built where all of these countries have the same interest, which is to make sure that the radical Islamic jihadist leaders of Iran not be able to fulfill their wishes, which are not limited to the destruction of Israel. And we will always work together on that front. That is what, by the way, what is keeping the peace between Israel and Jordan in place. That is why there's no doubt that at some point in the future, there will be normalization of relationships between Israel and Saudi Arabia. So no matter what pressure Iran tries to put on Jordan, at the end of the day, Jordan is actually more aligned with Israel in terms of how it sees the region than it is with Iran. The way I refer to it as stabilizing seeking countries, meaning they want to have stabilized situation. They don't want to have upheaval. And the relationship with Israel is ultimately what provides that. So that's a long way of answering your question, which is I do believe that Jordan will withstand any pressures that come from Iran. Here and there, they will make public statements that are anti-Israel or critical of Israel. But behind the scenes, there will always be cooperation, and that benefits both sides, both Jordan and Israel alike.
What is your take on this, Professor Amer Sabaileh?
Thank you very much for having me. Well, definitely, when it comes to security issues, we have to deal with realpolitik. We cannot deal with populism. So when it comes to politics, we hear a lot of populist statements. But let's put it this way. I think Jordan and the geography of Jordan, as far as it is very important as a position, But we have to agree that Jordan has been facing serious challenges since the fall of the Iraqi regime in 2003, and the appearance of militias and the concept of militia. The concept of militia in Iraq and the evolution that is today, it is the base, or Jordan is always active. And this means that Jordan plays a role in this region, definitely for its security, for its stability. And by realpolitik, you have to deal with these threats as threats for Jordan, not just threats to Israel. So smuggling weapons inside Jordan, even if the claimed goal is to sending it to West Bank by the Iranians, but actually this is a threat to Jordan. So yes, I believe that mathematically speaking, we are facing the same danger, and I don't believe that Jordan and Iran can have stable relations anytime soon, because simply the level of threat coming from the Iranian policies for Jordan is very high. Now, the other episode that Jordan is experiencing as well, the Red Sea, and the challenges for Jordan are so many, especially that the geographic area suffering from this is the only port and one emerging airport as well, Aqaba Airport. So in both cases, Jordan has been targeted completely in its economy, energy, tourism, etc. So for a very fragile economy like the Jordanian economy, such episodes represent serious challenges that you have to deal with. That's why we have the idea of the alternative now, and thinking how to find the alternatives, which is the landline borders, how to cooperate, but it's all based on cooperation at the end. You cannot face such challenges alone. You cannot face the impacts of these challenges alone. So basically, I believe that security is the priority today, and security, if we look to the map, we end up having a coalition, even if we don't build it. It's auto-building like itself, because simply the level of threats on these countries, Gulf countries, Jordan, are mostly the same. So I think this didn't finish yet, and actually it's the start, because and as long as we don't find solutions for the Syrian crisis and the situation in the south of Syria, especially with the presence of newcomers. Now Daesh or ISIS is emerging in Al-Badia again, emerging in areas in Iraq. This will add extra pressure as well to Jordan and its borders. But at the same time, we need to find solutions for Syria and the bordering line with Syria and Iraq. The level of antagonizing Jordan as well by Iraqi movements supported by Iran was very high, and it was very clear during the war in Gaza how this campaign started to appear. Even one of these groups started to talk about sending weapons or arming 12,000 Jordanians inside Jordan. The amount of weapons being smuggled in Jordan in recent months, the clashes with the Jordanian army on the borders in various occasions, we witnessed like militias that seeked a kind of confrontation with the Jordanian army. So if we take all this, we see Jordan facing continuous challenges, continuous growing challenges, and I think we are paying a price of this strategic position, the geography, in the middle of big conflicts and continuous crisis. So I'll stop here, and very happy to listen to your comments.
Thank you very much. International power are also interested in the Red Sea, not only because it's a strategic importance, but also the high economic stakes for both global and regional economies. Russia has interest in Sudan for the Red Sea naval base and has developed ties with Iran. At the same time, Iran has also Egypt has also strengthened ties with Russia. For example, Egypt negotiates with Russia to establish an industrial zone in the Suez Canal, and it also asked Russia as a mediator for its dam dispute with Ethiopia, and also discussed a plan to manufacture rockets and gunpowder to Russia. So, should Israel be concerned about Egypt's alignment with Russia, especially since Russia has a strong ties with Iran? Lipman.
Thank you so much. Israel is always concerned with Egypt and its relationships. Remember, we have many decades of what we would call a cold.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the productive and interactive discussions. I'd like to make a final concluding statement. The geopolitical stakes of the war in Ukraine, disputes in South China Sea, and potentially India-China rivalry at seas, and escalation in the Red Sea are high, and any misstep could have far-reaching implications for regional standing, internal stability, and even global security. Russia has been strengthening Iran by buying Iranian drones and ammunition for the war in Ukraine, and this will be considered as a greater threat to Israel. And I'd like to point out the influence of the United States. If the U.S. influence is declining, then the impact will be on Taiwan and Japan, and potentially stronger coalitions, which include rogue state coalitions. One question emerge, I think, and this is a concern, is if the EU expands into a larger combined bloc, EU and NATO, will this prompt Russia to strengthen its relationship with China? Additionally, will this lead China and other Asian countries to position themselves as the next global power bloc to counterbalance the influence of the EU? Well, APSI Forum will have a summit this November on tomorrow's geopolitics. We encourage you to participate in this APSI, and thank you for your time, and I'm sure we will meet again in the summit.